Welcome to Historic St. Mary's City, Maryland Day celebration. Established in 1966, the Commission is an executive agency of the state of Maryland, charged with a mission to preserve and protect the archaeological and historic record of Maryland's first colonial capital. During the past 50 years, we have conducted research to learn about the first capital. Today, the Commission manages a living history museum to interpret our findings and educate members of the public about Maryland's beginnings. We gratefully acknowledge the native people on whose ancestral homelands we gather, especially the Yakomoko, who were here when the colonists landed in 1634. We are grateful for the participation of our state and federal officials, academic experts, and leaders in the field who will share their thoughts with you on this occasion. What you will hear are several major announcements from the state of Maryland and from our federal leaders. What they have in common is their focus on the value of preservation and history for us today. They highlight how understanding the lived experience of people from the past and how they grappled with the challenges and opportunities of their time can help us with our own challenges and opportunities. We have so much to learn, and our ancestors have much to teach us. Again, thank you for being with us and enjoy the program.
Nule Lipta Ale Pak. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. To my elders and ancestors who have walked in front of me, I thank you. First, I must thank the Creator. Creator, we thank you for today's sunrise. As the day begins with the rising sun, we ask that you help guide our steps and give us courage so that we're able to see the truth and hope through the circle of life on the path we have chosen, so we may do so with honesty, dignity, and respect. Help us to remember to love and feel compassion for all mankind, and show us that it is right to make decisions with our heart, even at times when our heart hurts. Bring into balance mentally, physically, spiritually, so that we're able to know our place here on this earth, in life and in death. Give us the wisdom so that we're able to make wise choices in all things which are put in front of us.
Hello, it's an honor to join you to celebrate Maryland Day 2021. Today presents a truly historic opportunity to hear about an archaeological find that is of great importance to not only Maryland, but to the entire nation. When English colonists arrived in St. Mary's City in 1634, they bargained for a section of the village of the Yakomoko, and there they built a palisaded fort. This is the place where the colony of Maryland began. What we did not know was where this fort had been located. But after 50 years of research, Travis Parno, Director of Research and Collections, led the investigation that has identified the remains of the fort. Such a discovery invites us to reflect on the rich history of our beautiful state. I look forward to working with our federal partners to highlight the value that historic sites like historic St. Mary's cities have to enlighten, educate, and entertain us, and to provide opportunities to enjoy the natural beauty of Southern Maryland. Thank you. I wish you all a very happy Maryland Day.
Hello everyone, I'm Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford. Thank you for joining us for this virtual celebration of Maryland Day. The latest discovery here in St. Mary's City is the 1634 St. Mary's Fort. This find will add more to the already rich history of our state that began well before this was the capital of the Maryland colony. Maryland was the first colony to offer free exercise of religion and the first to separate church and state by law. This separation was about ideas, but also took physical form. The State House and the brick chapel were placed at opposite ends of the city. There was also no official church in Maryland with legally required payments or attendance, which made it different from England, where many settlers had come from. St. Mary's City was unique in offering diversity of faiths and in welcoming immigration, becoming the first colony to establish a system of naturalization so immigrants could become full citizens. People from all over the world have helped create our vibrant nation, made great contributions to our state, and shown us what it is to be a Marylander. The history of St. Mary's City shows how basic civil rights can be won and also lost. Matthias D'Souza, a black man, arrived in St. Mary's City as an indentured servant. He earned his freedom and became a voting member of the early Maryland legislature. Later, laws were passed in St. Mary's City that enslaved people of African descent for centuries. Men like Antonio, the first named enslaved man in Maryland records, resisted his enslavement by repeatedly fleeing and refusing to work. The plantation owner holding Antonio punished him and ultimately killed him for his inaction. Antonio died resisting his enslavement. He was not the last to fight for equality. Margaret Brent, an educated and independent woman, made a case for her right to vote as a landowner. She was denied. 270 years later, the 19th Amendment provided universal women's suffrage. The historic St. Mary's City Commission is dedicated to preservation, research, and education for the benefit of all Marylanders. After decades of research, discovery of the 1634 St. Mary's Fort offers an opportunity to examine shifts in native use, presence, and occupation of Southern Maryland. Life was altered by the arrival of European and African people. The Commission, with Piscataway tribal participants, will design public interpretation and exhibits of native and colonial cultures. Doing so will further explore the heritage of this area, bring diverse perspectives into conversations in new ways. The roots of America are here in St. Mary's City. The lessons of the past can guide our actions today and into the future. I commend the historic St. Mary's City Commission and their work to educate the more than 500,000 students who have visited St. Mary's City over the years. I hope that you will follow this project as it unfolds and talk with friends, family, and your neighbors about our shared history to improve our shared future. Thank you.
To us as Native people, the drum represents the heartbeat of life. When we're very quiet and we're very still, we can feel that our heart has a sound and it has a rhythm. And our elders have always told us, as long as we keep our drum alive, that the beauty of our culture will carry on for our children, for their children, and even as far as our 7th generation still yet to be born. And the drum represents the circle of life. It represents our Mother Earth, our grandfather the sun, our grandmother the moon. But it also teaches us that we're all members of the human family collectively together. For we all have that same heartbeat. And we all laugh the same way. And we all smile the same way. For we're all members of the human family together. And for us as Native people to keep the beauty of our culture and our traditions and our history alive, it all begins with our heartbeat.
It's my distinct pleasure to share with you the story of a major archaeological discovery made here at historic St. Mary's City. But first, I want to give you some important background information that will demonstrate why this is such an important find. To begin with, we need to look back thousands of years into the past. Archaeological artifacts tell us that native peoples have been present in southern Maryland for at least 10 to 11,000 years. For millennia, they thrived on the river's shores, forging deeply rooted relationships with the land, water, and air, and the bounties that each offered. Over time, communities grew as families gathered to work together, discuss important social and political decisions, and participate in sacred rituals. As they grew, these communities were overseen by werewances, or chiefs, who were advised by priests, elders, war leaders, and other important members of the community. By 1600 CE, the Piscataway paramount chiefdom had come to dominate the region that included much of the western shore of modern-day Maryland. In the years immediately prior to European arrival, the area of St. Mary's City was called Yacomico, an agricultural hamlet that was home to a tribe loosely allied with the Piscataway. In March of 1634, after months at sea aboard two ships called the Ark and Dove, approximately 150 European colonists arrived in the Chesapeake Bay. They stopped briefly at St. Clement's Island, and the colonial leadership, led by Governor Leonard Calvert, traveled to Moyone, the principal Piscataway settlement, to meet with Wanis, the TAYAC, or paramount chief of the Piscataway. Wanis met the English with bowmen at his side and discouraged the colonists from settling near his seat of power. At the advice of a fur trader and translator named Henry Fleet, the colonists looked elsewhere, traveling south to Yacomico. Once there, Governor Calvert met with the Yacomico leaders and negotiated for the right to settle here in exchange for textiles, axes, hoes, and other metal tools. The colonists came ashore and established St. Mary's City, the first capital of the Maryland colony. Colonial records tell us that the colonists moved into a portion of the vacated Yacomico village as they set about constructing St. Mary's Fort, the place that would be their home for the first years of settlement. In a letter written by Governor Calvert in May of 1634, he described the conditions of settlement, including the construction of St. Mary's Fort. He wrote, quote, "We have seated ourselves within 1/2 mile of the river, within a palisado of 120 yards square with 4 flanks. We have mounted 1 piece of ordnance and placed 6 murderers, a type of cannon, in parts most convenient. A fortification we think sufficient to defend against any such weak enemies as we have reason to expect here." So according to Governor Calvert, the colonists had built a large square fort with 4 bastions on the corners, in which they had mounted various types of cannon. The fort walls were built of palisades. A palisade is a type of wooden fortification made by placing timbers side by side in a trench and then filling the trench in, forming a large wooden wall that would have stood 10 to 14 feet high. We don't have a ship's manifest from the Ark and Dove, but we estimate that approximately 150 colonists crossed the Atlantic in the first wave of colonization. The colonists came from all walks of life, from Maryland's first governor, Leonard Calvert, whose family owned the colony, and other wealthy merchant planters, to the less well-off people who came over as indentured servants, hoping to earn their own plot of land on which to build a home. Also included among the initial arrivals was Father Andrew White, a Jesuit priest who recorded many of the details about the journey that are invaluable to our study of early Maryland, and Matthias de Souza, a man of African ancestry who came here as an indentured servant, but soon earned his freedom and participated in the Assembly of Freemen in 1642, becoming the first person of African ancestry to participate in English colonial governance. Matthias de Souza was likely more of the exception than the rule. We do not know precisely when the first enslaved Africans arrived in the Maryland colony, but we do know from historical records that members of the Calvert family were trying to purchase enslaved Africans from the Virginia colony a few years after the colonists arrived in Maryland, but they appear to have been unsuccessful in their efforts. Colonial laws from the late 1630s and early 1640s reference enslaved people, so it's very likely that some wealthy colonists had been successful in securing enslaved persons to work on their tobacco plantations. Some of those enslaved individuals may have resided for a time in St. Mary's Fort. While the colonists occupied the fort, colonial records suggest that relations with the native peoples of Maryland remained relatively stable. Native peoples visited St. Mary's Fort periodically to trade meat and furs for European material culture. Soon, however, conditions deteriorated, as the colonists' hunger for land to grow the valuable tobacco crop led some to encroach on native lands, sparking disagreement and violence. By the early 1640s, the colonists had started to move out of St. Mary's Fort and settle along waterways that afforded access to merchant ships interested in purchasing tobacco. In the years that followed, the Maryland colony survived multiple rebellions, and relations with native peoples of Maryland remained strained as treaties were established and violated. Still, the colony grew, thanks to the European appetite for tobacco, which in turn forced many native peoples to move away or to try and make a home among communities that were increasingly marginalized. With St. Mary's City as its capital, Maryland offered a safe place for the free exercise of Christian religion. But it was that very freedom that led to the city's decline. After a Protestant rebellion in the late 1680s, the Catholic Calverts were overthrown and replaced by a royal governor who relocated Maryland's capital to modern-day Annapolis. While this act turned St. Mary's City into a backwater, it limited further development in the area, effectively preserving St. Mary's City's incomparable archaeological record. Historic St. Mary's City has been conducting archaeology at Maryland's first capital for 50 years. This work has revealed invaluable information about the native peoples of southern Maryland, life in the 17th century colonial capital, and how the area changed in the 18th and 19th centuries following the relocation of the capital. Yet despite all of that research, the one piece that eluded us for years was the location of St. Mary's Fort, the site that represented a period of immeasurable change in Maryland's history. But we did have a couple of ideas about where it might be found.
I'm Henry Miller, the Maryland Heritage Scholar for Historic St. Mary's City. I've been exploring the colony for many, many years. One of the most enduring mysteries of early Maryland is where was the 1634 fort? Local legend had it that it was over on the river bank, near where Dr. Broome in 1840 built his plantation house. And we've done some archaeology there, and there are early artifacts, but not in large numbers. In the 1980s, we did a survey of this field called the Mill Field, and were astonished to find a massive concentration of early artifacts. This led Dr. Timothy Reardon to propose that the fort may have been over here, but we didn't know for sure. We had to have more evidence.
In 2017, we received a grant from the Maryland Historical Trust, with support from the Historic St. Mary's City Foundation, to test our hypotheses. We used the grant funds to hire a geophysicist named Dr. Timothy Horsley. A geophysicist is an archaeological specialist who uses scientific instrumentation to look below the ground without actually digging. Dr. Horsley came to Historic St. Mary's City in 2018 and used 3 different techniques: magnetic susceptibility, magnetometry, and ground-penetrating radar to examine 2 areas of our landscape. We were excited to have Dr. Horsley conduct his survey, but the first 2 phases of his investigation yielded little in the way of definitive results. As luck would have it, I was away on vacation in November of 2018 when Dr. Horsley was conducting the final part of his survey, the ground-penetrating radar. And I can honestly say I've never been so happy as to have my vacation interrupted when I received a text message from Dr. Horsley that said, "I think we have it." Dr. Horsley was looking at data from the ground-penetrating radar, which sort of resembles a CAT scan of the ground. And what he had found were traces of a large palisade trench that formed a massive rectangle. This palisade enclosed a rectangular area measuring 104 by 59 yards, much smaller than the 120 square yards described in Governor Calvert's 1634 letter. Palisade also only featured one obvious bastion on the western side, rather than the 4 that we expected. Within the palisade, the ground-penetrating radar survey suggested the presence of many other cultural features, such as hearths, pits, and small circular features called post holes, which represent where buildings once stood. Some of these buildings appeared to have been rectangular timber frame English colonial buildings, while others resemble circular or rounded structures that may have been built by native peoples. While the data looked exciting, we needed to excavate a portion of the site to see if we could determine when it was constructed. Simply put, the geophysical survey could suggest what lay beneath the ground, but could not tell us when those features were created. In 2019, I led a team of archaeologists to excavate an area on the west side of the site. These excavations revealed part of the trench that formed the western wall in the basket. We excavated a portion of the trench and found that it was 2 feet wide and nearly 3 feet deep. At the bottom of the trench, we identified the remains of palisade timbers, visible now only as stains in the soil. This evidence, combined with the artifacts found in the trench fill, confirmed that we had indeed located the remains of the 1634 St. Mary's Fort.
We look at the historical record, and there's very few clues that have survived about where the fort was located. One of them was a 1638 reference to the militia assembling in the chapel yard near the fort. Well, we know where the 1638 chapel was. It's right under the rebuilt chapel behind me. Over on the river, that just did not make a lot of sense. But now that we have discovered this location and confirmed it, that reference finally makes complete sense. They were assembling truly near to the fort.
This discovery is of monumental significance. We've located the earliest colonial archaeological site in Maryland, a massive site that represents a major shift in our state's history, and we've barely scratched the surface. Approximately 98% of the site still remains to be excavated. Before we continued to investigate St. Mary's Fort, we made another determination. In order to understand such an important moment in Maryland history, we needed to look outwards, to reach out to our friends and colleagues in the Native community and to seek their help. Since 2020, we have engaged members of the Piscataway Conoy tribe, the Piscataway Indian Nation, and other local groups to discuss the discovery of St. Mary's Fort and assess how we should move forward with the study of this site. What became clear from these conversations was that we needed to widen our scope. Previous archaeological investigations conducted at historic St. Mary's City tell us that near the remains of St. Mary's Fort lie archaeological sites that are much older. Not far from where I'm standing today are 2 such sites, one dating at least 500 to 2,000 years old, and another dating at least 3,000 to 5,000 years old. These sites, like so many in our region, help to document the deep history of Native peoples living in this area. So rather than focus our attention exclusively on St. Mary's Fort, we've created a new and exciting collaborative initiative that brings together members of the Piscataway community and historic St. Mary's City to investigate 3 adjacent archaeological sites spanning thousands of years of human occupation. This initiative is called the People to People Project, and it will include not only the archaeological and historical study of these significant sites, but also the creation of public interpretation that will be designed in collaboration with our Native friends and colleagues. The discovery of St. Mary's Fort and the creation of the People to People Project is a thrilling and unprecedented opportunity to delve into our state's history and to learn so much about where we've come from and where we're heading. So thank you for spending time with us today as we embark on this journey. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but I have no doubt that there will be plenty of exciting new discoveries along the way.
My ancestors were the largest and most powerful nation located on the western shores of the Chesapeake and heavily concentrated in what we know today as Southern Maryland, long before the arrival of the Europeans. Today, we're at the village, the home of the Yakomikos, our most southern historical homeland territory, as they were the first of the Piscataway Confederacy to fully encounter the Europeans. It has been said, before you can travel forward or even truly understand why we are here today, one must at least understand its past. History is our mechanism to connect our past to the present. It provides us with a sense of purpose for who we are, a sense of being. Our worlds have once again converged, and it is here that we have the opportunity for all Marylanders to obtain knowledge, the knowledge that has been silent, the knowledge that has been hidden, and that's just the English version. And then there's the Piscataway knowledge that has been passed down from hundreds of generations. Almost 355 years ago, in April 1666, right here in this colonial capital of St. Mary's City, my ancestors, the Piscataway, along with their extended communities of the Mattawoman, the Potterbacks, Newsamex, the Nacotchtank, the Chaptico, the Dogs, and 11 others arrived here and now what is known as the colonial capital of Maryland, and constructed a treaty agreement with the Maryland government, thus creating one of the first government-to-government relationship with its indigenous peoples. This treaty, known as the Articles of Peace and Amity, would set the course for Anglo-Native relations, forging a close, if sometimes uneasy collaboration on all sides. Promises made, promises broken. Here in this capital, my ancestors exchanged wampum and received gifts from the government. Again, I am honored when the Honorable Governor Hogan came here to St. Mary's City. I presented him a pendant of a deer antler button with attached string of wampum, signifying the continuous relationship of the Piscataway Conoy people. That wampum is housed at the State House in Annapolis today, with a replica here at the Blackie Stone Room at the St. Mary's College. Today I possess the same wampum to represent the continuous government-to-government relationship with the Piscataway Conoy people and the great state of Maryland. Ladies and gentlemen, our history runs deep. Today, this place known by my relatives, my ancestors, is unfortunately unfamiliar to us. It represents a time and space only to those who came upon our shores, looking for shelter, looking for new hope, looking for a new beginning, and looking for religious freedom. But at what cost? And to who shall pay that cost? We come here on what is considered Maryland Day to commemorate our ancestors, because this is where the Creator has placed us. This is the place where some of my ancestors rest, and hopefully into perpetuity. Here, we are deemed to enlighten ourselves and not only to explore the history as it was only written by the colonists, but also from the perspective and knowledge of what is known as Maryland's original people, through Piscataway eyes, and to expand our rich history of what makes her today.
Welcome to an ancestral world, one also created out of this soil, and in interaction with societies formed over thousands of years by millions of people, a place now known as the Americas, one that saw civilizations rise and fall and rise, a place unto itself, as was also known in the world of Africa, Asia, and Europe. One of the many unique and interconnected places transformed by a form of agriculture developed in Mesoamerica, where indigenous agronomists invented a brilliant grain out of a grass called teosinte, a grain that became known as corn, a highly engaged society that culturally sculpted forests, rivers, and meadows. Welcome to Yakamako, one of the interconnected tribes with a larger chiefdom known as the Piscataway, one that had relationships to the south with the Powhatan peoples, and to the north with the Nanticoke and Lenape, to the west with the Susquehannocks and the Monacans, and many more whose names we no longer know. This is the longest cultural presence in this place now known as Maryland, where people live their lives and plan their futures. A place that received a new people, not one that was entirely unknown to them, and perhaps a people who were welcomed with caution, the English arriving on the Ark and the Dove, the Marylanders who came to this place in 1634. Here at St. Mary's City, touch the place that brings you back in time, a place known as Yakamako, where for a moment, two peoples came together for a brief time. Let us come back together now, learn from our past, and dedicate to a future that is still creating a democracy that must include and celebrate all of us.
This is important to the story of America. What's beautiful about what is being discovered, it's not only does it help shed more light on Maryland's indigenous communities and their centuries-old, nay, millennial-old presence in the Maryland region, but it also talks about the Africans that were brought to that region as well to form the settlement that would eventually bring about the growth and the expansion of the colony of Maryland and subsequently the state. What lies underneath this story, in addition to stories of conquest and stories of exploitation of land and labor, there's also the story of us, the story of every single person who descends from these folks, the nation that descends from the work of these folks, their struggles, their triumphs, their capacity to find a way forward. And I think that once we begin to really understand, once we begin to interpret these important stories that acknowledge and share the fact that diversity has been at the core of the founding of this nation, conflict has been at the core of this nation, but so has promise, so has compromise, so has finding ways forward that can, again, benefit all. So, again, I say congratulations on this find. It's extraordinary. One of the challenges that we often have in this field is that for so long we've perpetuated a certain narrative about the founding of this nation. Each of those original 13 colonies were all founded as economic enterprises. Each of the 13 colonies all had direct conflict with their indigenous communities, and each of the 13 colonies found ways to, again, exploit land and labor to advance an idea that would eventually include all of us, even if it didn't intend to in the beginning. And so I think as you think about all of the discoveries yet to be made, because I understand that less than 2% of the site has been excavated at this point, but as you begin this important work, we're going to discover so much about each other, so much about those early beginnings that will help inform us moving forward. And the more important thing is, not only does this give us an opportunity to shift interpretation at Historic St. Mary's, but at all of our historic sites that deal with early colonialism, but it also gives us an opportunity to do more. It gives us this rare taste, this opportunity to reflect, to grow, and to ensure that future generations really understand what happened, not understanding what we hope would happen, not trying to gloss it over, but really deeply discovering all of the things that brought about the state of Maryland, all the things that made it a part of this collective of 13 colonies that would eventually form the United States. And the United States would take with her the lessons that it learned, lessons about freedom, lessons about equality, but also, unfortunately, those lessons about expansionism, those ideas about capitalism, the ideas that would strengthen as well as weaken us. And so if we're really going to posit that understanding history helps us repeat those mistakes, then we have to make sure that the history that we are teaching is rich, reflects all of those who helped make it, and then we can really begin to make sure that we aren't repeating mistakes of the past. But we can't do that until we really deeply uncover everything that we know about it. And so again, congratulations to my colleagues and peers at Historic St. Mary's City on this important find, to the state of Maryland that is supporting this effort for archaeology. And until then, I'll see you soon. Best of luck, my friends.
So this is a major archaeological discovery. It is truly where Maryland began. Led by Leonard Calvert and a number of other people, when they arrived here in 1634, they were undertaking a challenging but very significant step in human history. This was not only a British colony, one of the fourth one to be established in what is now the United States, but it was also an effort to create a new society. And what I mean by that is, how could people from varied ethnic backgrounds and diverse religious beliefs possibly live together? The popular opinion at the time was that was impossible, and you had to have a state religion to produce unity for people. Lord Baltimore thought that was not necessarily true. So when they arrived here, they undertook an ambitious effort to create a society where liberty of conscience and the free exercise of religion would be the way people lived together. And it actually proved to be successful.
This significant historical discovery will profoundly impact our understanding of the settlement's early days and the interactions between indigenous residents and the arrival of European colonists and enslaved Africans. As Maryland's first capital, St. Mary's City has given our nation several of its most fundamental values: separation of church and state, the belief in religious toleration, the first person of mixed heritage granted voice and vote in the Maryland legislature, and the earliest known example of the fight for women's suffrage. The discovery of the location of St. Mary's Fort will allow us to look beneath the layers of the later years of St. Mary's City to explore its earliest beginnings. The People-to-People project, which will focus on the interactions between Native and colonial peoples, will provide a unique opportunity to examine the role of the other and the development of relations between disparate cultures. This effort carries strong resonance today when we confront a nation divided and there are fundamental disconnects in worldview that fuel dissonance and distrust of each other. After nearly 400 years, the lessons of St. Mary's City's earliest days are still relevant. This project will provide a historical window for contemporary collaboration that will enrich our community while informing the interpretation of St. Mary's Fort and the various perspectives brought together in this place, then and now. I wish our partners at Historic St. Mary's City's great success in their endeavor to bring St. Mary's Fort into the light of day and look forward to help promoting the lessons of early interactions as we seek to build a stronger community in today's Maryland.
For anyone who loves Maryland and its history, our little city of historic St. Mary's City is at the heart of that history, still a mystery that captures our imagination. The commissioners of historic St. Mary's City and I carry on the mission we are charged with to preserve and protect the archaeological and historical record of Maryland's first colonial capital, and the development of the site as an educational center for students of all ages. We have many of our political leaders celebrating with us today. All of us at Historic St. Mary's City and the Commission want to thank you for your help and all you do for us Marylanders. One person who is not with us in body, but I feel his spirit, is past State Senate President Mike Miller. He was the consummate Marylander who was a scholar of Maryland's history and who is the greatest historical benefactor of Historic St. Mary's City ever. I urge everyone to offer a prayer for Historic St. Mary's City in honor of Mike Miller. Freedom of conscience in Maryland landed with Leonard Calvert and Father Andrew White, S.J., and their companions on the Ark and the Dove. They planted the seeds that grew into many of the freedoms we enjoy today as Americans. May God continue to bless our United States and our beloved Maryland.
It's here in Southern Maryland for the first time in the Western world that religious freedom was ever codified into law. The first time this basic human principle, this founding right, was put into law, and that was here, and it's huge. We are a land of many firsts and contrasts. We are where the Piscataway, the first people, have survived. They're still here, survived against all odds and creating a new legacy. We are an African-American story. Again, people who have survived against all odds. And here in Southern Maryland, there is a United Nations site of remembrance, honoring that struggle, that resistance, that heritage. We are where Matthias de Sousa, the first person of African descent ever served in a legislature in America. We are where the first woman ever petitioned for the right to vote, Margaret Brent, 1648. In Southern Maryland, we have the Mallows Bay National Marine Sanctuary with the ghost fleet of sunken ships. We have 1,000 miles of shoreline. We are crisscrossed with national trails We are where some of the first astronauts ever trained, where people still work the land and the water. We are where there were ancient creatures, where you can still pick up a fossil on the beach. We are Calvert, Charles, St. Mary's counties, soon to include Southern Prince George's County in the national designation. So we join today together in celebration of these two remarkable announcements, the National Heritage Area and the discovery at historic St. Mary's City of the historic fort. All of this informs who we are, who we were, and who we want to be.
Hi, I'm Congressman Steny Hoyer, and I'm proud to join Historic St. Mary's to celebrate Maryland Day 2021. As we mark this anniversary of the landing of the Ark and Dove in 1634, we do so with the exciting news that the original site of the fort they constructed, Fort St. Mary's, has been discovered and is now being excavated. We have so much to learn from that site, which I'm certain will yield both interesting finds as well as the greater detail about life in 17th century St. Mary's, particularly the relationship between the first European settlers, the first African Americans brought here in slavery, and the Native American nations they encountered. Celebrating Maryland Day offers us an opportunity not only to look back on the complex and sometimes difficult history of our state, but also to be proud of what we have achieved over the last 387 years. Together, over the centuries, Marylanders have built a state that celebrates diversity, equality, justice, and opportunity. And our job in 2021 and beyond is to make sure that this chance is equal for all Marylanders, that everyone has a fair shot. I look forward to continuing to work with my colleagues in the Maryland Congressional Delegation to achieve that aim. Just as I'm excited to continue working with Historic St. Mary's to ensure that our state's history is studied and preserved. That's why I was proud to introduce legislation along with Senators CARDIN and Van Hollen to designate Southern Maryland as a National Heritage Area in partnership with the National Park Service. Once enacted, this designation will share the story of rich cultural, historic, and natural resources of Southern Maryland. And it will provide federal funding to support conservation and historic preservation in one of Maryland's most iconic regions. We have a shared responsibility to do our part today to ensure that Marylanders of tomorrow can continue to learn our history, to treasure our natural and historic spaces, and to enjoy opportunities that their forebears made possible. Thank you, and have a happy Maryland Day.
Hi, I'm Senator Ben Cardin. I have the privilege of representing the great state of Maryland in the United States Senate. Greetings to everyone gathered virtually in historic St. Mary's City and across our state. Happy Maryland Day. Congratulations to Dr. Travis Parno and the historic St. Mary's City archaeological team. You have an exciting task ahead to integrate the original St. Mary's Fort into historic St. Mary's City living history before Maryland's 400th anniversary in 2034. This find is one of many reasons this extraordinary region deserves to be recognized by Congress as a National Heritage Area. National Heritage Areas are large lived-in landscapes where historic, cultural, and natural resources combine to form cohesive, nationally important places. In 1984, Ronald Reagan called the very first National Heritage Area a new kind of national park and brought together heritage, conservation, recreation, and economic development. Today, the federal program includes 55 National Heritage Areas. I look forward to working with my colleagues, Steny Hoyer and Chris Van Hollen, as well as local Tri-County partners, led by Lucille Walker, to make the Southern Maryland National Heritage Destination Southern Maryland Area number 56. Thank you to everyone who's making this history happen. And again, happy Maryland Day.
Hi, I'm Chris Van Hollen, and proud to represent our great state of Maryland in the United States Senate. and especially pleased to join the entire historic St. Mary's City family for today's Maryland Day celebration. St. Mary's City is a crown jewel of our state, combining history, archaeology, and community on hallowed ground that has been enjoyed by generations of Marylanders, young and old. Today we celebrate both the 387th birthday of our great state and the recent discovery of St. Mary's Fort, which was built by English settlers in 1634. This landmark excavation has helped unlock keys to our past and helped reveal and preserve important parts of our state's history. It's an achievement that will be studied by historians for years to come and explored by visitors from across the country and around the world. St. Mary's Fort is one of the oldest colonial archaeological sites in Maryland and was the fourth English colony in the country. This very spot facilitated cultural exchanges between English and native cultures, and I'm pleased to know that St. Mary's City is partnering with members of the Piscataway tribe and other stakeholders to learn more about the fort's history. In Congress, I've advocated for the protection and preservation of many of our state's historic sites and was pleased to be an original co-sponsor of legislation to make Southern Maryland a new national heritage area. St. Mary's is a historical marvel and must be preserved along with other historically significant locations throughout our state. And I look forward to coming down to historic St. Mary's City once again, once we beat this pandemic. Thank you to the entire historic St. Mary's City team for your hard work and all you do for our state. Happy Maryland Day.
Hello, this is Maryland Senate President Bill Ferguson. It's fantastic to be with all of you for this year's Maryland Day, albeit virtually. Maryland Day is a vital celebration of our state's rich history each year, and it's fitting that this year's focus is on the St. Mary's Fort. Historic St. Mary's City provides each of us a lens into Maryland's history going back to our colonial days and beyond. The discovery of the original St. Mary's Fort's location is an exciting development that gives us an opportunity to reconnect with our state's earliest history as we approach our 400th anniversary. I am particularly excited about the People-to-People initiative in collaboration with historic St. Mary's City and members of the Piscataway community. We cannot truly understand Maryland's history, including that of St. Mary's Fort, without also telling the story of Maryland's Native American population. While the St. Mary's Fort was erected in 1635, the Native people have lived in the surrounding area for at least 11,000 years, and their insight provides meaningful detail to our state's past. The People-to-People project to situate archaeological excavations at St. Mary's Fort and nearby Native sites will highlight the long history of Native life in St. Mary's City and the entire region. As the People-to-People program conducts its work over the next decade, I look forward to remaining engaged with its ongoing discoveries and the critical history those discoveries uncover. I sincerely hope to visit the excavation site in the near future to see its progress for myself and with my family. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today in celebrating Maryland Day and historic St. Mary's City. I hope each of you has an enriching and educational experience through today's important announcement.
Good morning. I'm Speaker Adrienne Jones. I'm excited to join the historic St. Mary's City Commission, my colleagues, state, local, and federal partners in celebrating our great state's 387th birthday and the discovery of St. Mary's Fort. There's no better way to celebrate Maryland Day than to recognize St. Mary's Fort, a great symbol of Maryland's rich history of diversity and collaboration. Thank you to everyone who is part of the People-to-People initiative who helped to uncover more details about Maryland's cultural past. With exhibits of the Native and colonial culture, along with public programming about the 17th century life in the region, we will all have a better grasp of how Maryland was founded. Thank you to the Historic St. Mary's City Commission for your work on this project and for your continued effort to educate the public about Maryland's historic past through unique and exciting programs.
Good morning. I'm Senator Jack Bailey. I represent District 29, encompassing St. Mary's and southern Calvert County. It has been truly an honor to work on drafting some very important legislation that I'm going to tell you about that involves historic St. Mary's City, and to be part of the exciting developments in the district and a wonderful opportunity to share and learn more about the rich history we have here. District 29 is one of the best kept secrets in our state. I was able to tour the site of the first fort with my wife Karen, my children Helen and Taft, along with Delegate CROSBY, and the dedicated personnel and the volunteers that help at historic St. Mary's City. As we celebrate this Maryland Day, we are also working towards the future successes and celebrations that we look forward to in 2034. I have been working with the Governor Hogan, and Senate President Ferguson to establish historic St. Mary's City Fort to 400 Commission with various state agencies and the secretaries to ensure that we are able to successfully recognize the pivotal role that historic St. Mary's City played in not only our state's rich history, but the solid foundation and history of our nation that occurred in our own backyard as the birthplace of religious freedom. I owe a debt of gratitude to everyone who has participated in this effort. The excitement for what the future holds as we prepare for our momentous occasion, our state's 400th anniversary, is unmatched, and we are excited to have such great people working with us towards an incredible celebration.
I'm pleased to be here on the grounds of historic St. Mary's City as we celebrate this year's Maryland Day online. I wish I could be with you in person, but it's important not to derail the rapid decline in COVID-19 cases as the statewide vaccination effort continues. While the world's work went forward during the pandemic, so too did the work here at historic St. Mary's City. There have been some pretty exciting developments over the past year. I am proud to work with historic St. Mary's City in an effort with our federal partners to establish our region as a national heritage area. This would not only encourage further historic preservation, but it also heightens the public appreciation and support for the history and heritage of Maryland's birthplace. At this time last year, representatives from Historic St. Mary's met with Senator Bailey and me to share the news of the discovery of St. Mary's Fort. This historic site, once cohabited by English settlers and Native Americans, is where St. Mary's County's long legacy of tolerance and cooperation between differing groups began. A direct through line can be drawn from this spirit to other historical figures such as Matthias de Sousa, an indentured servant who became the first African American to serve in any legislature in the United States. I applaud historic St. Mary's City for working with Francis Gray of the Piscataway Conoy tribe in this effort. Their collaboration will ensure that as we continue to reveal our area's history, we do so collectively and inclusively. Both Senator Bailey and I were able to tour the area of this major discovery last summer. And it is not an understatement to say this is our Jamestown moment as we approach Maryland's 400th anniversary in 2034. I hope all of you enjoy the program of events this weekend as we commemorate the important history of our region and our state. Happy Maryland Day.
Historic St. Mary's City has a long tradition of integrating cutting-edge scholarship in history and archaeology with innovative public-facing museum practices. Today's announcement marks an exciting new departure for Historic St. Mary's City and for the study of Maryland history in general. These two intertwined projects, the excavation of the fort and the People-to-People initiative, promise to shed new light not only on Maryland's founding, but also on its 400+ generations and counting of Indigenous history. These paired initiatives also point to the future, to future collaborations between the Piscataway Conoy tribe and Historic St. Mary's City, to the ongoing revisions to Historic St. Mary's City's permanent exhibition, and looking ahead to 2034, to the 400th anniversary of the founding of Maryland. I am very excited about this future and very much look forward to seeing the fruits of this collaboration and research in the years to come.
I was invited to speak to you today because of my experience in learning from and teaching history. Now, I'm not a historian myself, I'm a lawyer by training, but in order to do the kind of work I was doing, which is to represent Indian tribes, you have to learn some history. And one of the things you learn is that there is no distinguishing between Native American history and American history, at least for the past 500 or so years. So in learning about Maryland Day and the historic colonial moment that it represents, I was not surprised to learn that the archival resources we rely on to tell the story sometimes conflict with one another regarding which exact calendar day the landing at St. Clement's Island occurred. Now, sometimes we say in the museum world, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. And I do like a good origin story. But in fact, we should try to find the truth. And the reason I say that is because even though we're very fond of our stories, very fond of our origin stories in particular, the truth is often much bigger and better than we know. And that's why it's important to continue studying and to learn and interpret and reinterpret our histories over time. Now, the People-to-People project at Historic St. Mary's City represents an important step toward developing the educational resources we need to tell the American story on a national level. And I want to congratulate and thank Historic St. Mary's City and the Piscataway Indian Nation for their work together on the excavation and interpretation of the St. Mary's Fort and the native sites associated. I look forward to learning from your efforts at Historic St. Mary's City and also from your work on Through Piscataway Eyes. So why is all of this important? Well, obviously, you can't know where you are unless you know where you've been. And for far too long, many parts of our American history have been, well, ignored or perhaps even directly suppressed. But what we're finding as we bring forward the story of the United States and of America through Native American eyes and through African American eyes and through the many different peoples who came together to make the United States what it is today, we're finding that our history is much richer than we imagined, that the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves, at least up to now, have been incomplete. And we certainly sense that at some level when we begin to learn the other things that we need to know about our country. So these kinds of projects are very important. And, you know, for far too long, and certainly in the field of museums, history and culture were seen only through the eyes of non-Native experts. And so Native American history was being told, Native American culture was being taught by those who were not the most knowledgeable. One of the things that we did at the National Museum of the American Indian, in fact, one of its founding principles, is that these stories cannot be fully told, they cannot be fully understood, unless they are explained by the people whose stories we are telling. Now, that seems like an unremarkable proposition in this day and age, and perhaps it is, but it's been important to know that that was not always the case. And really, although it was already beginning, even before the founding of the National Museum of the American Indian. It certainly accelerated thereafter. And what was at one point thought to be a very controversial notion of involving the community in the interpretation of their history and culture now is an accepted practice and is as it should be. So it's particularly rewarding to us to see the collaboration between historic St. Mary City and the Piscataway Nation. You know, places like this, places that reveal our history and culture, are important. They bring us together and they allow us to have conversations about the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves. We won't always agree on any particular story, and that's okay. What is important is that we acknowledge the validity of the different interpretations and the different ways that we interpret and understand the events of our past. We can find our way to these convergences, the places where our stories come together, only by listening to each other and being willing to tell our stories about ourselves. And that's what I like so much about this project, that the people you bring together to talk about this history, which is not always a happy one, nevertheless, are leading us toward a greater understanding of ourselves and our country. And that's what really matters. So I want to thank again Historic St. Mary City and the Piscataway Nation for coming together in this way, for telling this story. And I hope you'll continue to reach out because, you know, the American story is incredibly complex. And we should not shy away from that complexity. We should embrace it. We should look for understanding the story from many different perspectives. And so as we continue to do that, we're going to become ever more knowledgeable and ever more understanding of what it's going to take to make a more perfect union. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you for joining us for our Maryland Day program. These are exciting times for historic St. Mary City and all of Southern Maryland. We look forward to seeing you here and to sharing news about the People to People project and the National Heritage Area designation. Both will bring greater awareness to the rich history of our region and offer great opportunities for partnerships that strengthen our community.